Hello, everyone. We're back at it again with our episode of When You Learn with Friends. My name's Carl,
My name's Devin.
And I'm Jason.
and I'll be the teacher today. And I'm gonna pick a video game series that is near and dear to my heart. Not my favorite game of all time, but
Metroid?
A pretty close section. Wait, no, second. There we go. And yeah, that is Metroid.
Holy shit, I was right!
Yeah.
Hey.
Bunghole? No, because before I get into it too deep, just fanboy a little. Metroid is just the bee's knees, man. Like, it's such a fun game. I first played it. I remember actually watching Let's Players play Super Metroid. I'm like, this game, even though it's like 2 years before I was born, like, so it's super old, it looks so much fun. So like I downloaded it off the Wii and the virtual shop back in when the Wii shop was still open, and I played it. I'm like, damn, this is good. And from there onward, I just became like really obsessed, and I just wanted to play more of the games, and I got real into the series. So what I want to start off with today is just a simple I just want to cover the games in a broad stroke, specifically the gameplay of the game. Oh wait, but before I do that, what are your guys' experience with the Metroid series?
Me personally, I
mean, you and Devin, yeah.
Well, yeah, but me personally, I've played the SNES on the Nintendo Switch Online game service. I played the SNES version of the Metroid, the Super Metroid.
Yes.
Yeah, I played that for all of maybe 20 minutes, and I didn't quite understand where to go on this first room. I was a little confused, and the controls weren't the best for me at that time. It's definitely something I want to try again, and probably will try again. Just at this time, I have done maybe 20 minutes of gameplay. But I know a lot about the series as a whole.
Double heresy, but
So
we'll see if we can forgive you.
I always remember it from visiting my uncle as a kid. When I visited him, he was the game guy, man. He had all the games. He had, and
so you're talking about the uncle, right? The uncle I know?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one that works at Nintendo?
No, he doesn't.
No, he worked for NASA.
Yeah, he worked for
there we go.
NASA and DreamWorks, and now he works for Zoom, which is the service we're using today.
Plug.
Yeah, but
Not sponsored.
I would always play Metroid when I would come over to his house, and it was one of my favorite games of his. I don't remember which one it was though.
Is the one you had to point the controller or at
It
the
was
TV?
three-dimensional.
Okay,
I know
so
that.
Probably the Prime
That's probably the
series.
Prime
Yeah,
series.
I'm pretty sure it was Prime, Metroid Prime. Yep.
Now, I know Metroid Prime is one of the most regarded in the Metroid series as a whole. And
Yeah, well, I'm
wanting,
going to
like,
save that for later.
trilogy.
But yeah, it was very
get
much.
to it.
I actually have sale numbers.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Prepared.
Metroid Prime, depending on the source, sold. Let's see, sold 2.84 million copies. Or sold, 2.8 million copies. So it's either the highest sold game or second highest sold game
Wow.
in the series. Yeah.
That was Metroid Prime Federation Force, you said?
You can. How dare you? How dare you? No, well, sadly, we were not talking about that one because the only games of the Metroid series that I just didn't feel like really needed research was Federation Force and Prime Pinball.
Okay, for an uninitiated, what's up with Metroid?
Federation
that one.
Force?
Yeah, Federation Force.
It was the one that I believe
it was a spin-off game.
Oh, okay.
It was a spin-off
Alright.
game that everyone was not expecting or wanted.
Well, everyone wanted
Okay.
a new game, and instead we got some spin-off game.
It had like
it was
soccer
like-
in it or something, didn't it?
Of course.
We got first introduced to it by Nintendo World Championship.
I remember this.
They were like, in the 3 rounds, we have a mystery game in the second round, and it was the mini game version of like soccer.
Mhm.
So it was like Rocket League for the DS.
Yeah, it was like first-person mech soccer.
Yeah, which I'm
Sounds like a spin-off game.
yeah, it does. Well, that was a mini game within the game that they decided to have as a challenge.
Oh, okay.
And pinball, Metroid Prime Pinball it's fucking pinball on the DS.
Hey man, pinball is fun. I've been playing the original Pokemon pinball on my Game Boy Color recently.
You
with
guys
the little
ever-
vibration pack. That's a good time.
You guys ever go to the bar with all the pinball machines? What is it called? Level? No, not Level Up.
Well, AFK or Level Up?
No, it's not AFK. It's not Level Up. It's
Because in
we're
in the
stationed.
Bay,
in San
we're
Jose,
stationed
yeah.
in San Jose,
Yeah.
but you won't know where. But in downtown San Jose, there's a bar called Level Up that's like totally 80s arcade theme.
Yeah.
And then you have AFK, which is more of like, as you're eating, you can rent out a console and a game and play for it.
I've been to the Pinball Museum in Las Vegas. That was pretty cool. Jack Black went there.
Really?
Yeah,
I mean,
Jack
I
Black
bet
has
you
a
could
video.
play Jack Black.
Hilarious.
Yeah, Jack Black has a YouTube video on his channel of him going to the Pinball Museum that I went to. It's actually really cool. If any of you guys are in Vegas, I highly recommend, or stopping by Vegas anytime soon.
You gotta check that out.
Maybe I should get married there too.
Did you go?
Anyways,
Did you go to the pawn shop?
I didn't. We wanted to, but it was a little too far out on the edge.
Oh, okay. Man, I love that show.
It's such a ridiculous show. But to get back on topic,
Uh-huh.
Metroid is one of the like bigger like behemoths of Nintendo's properties. But yet it has only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15 games to its name.
Wow, that's a lot, actually.
And that's well, I mean, compared to Mario and Zelda, not that much. And a lot of people put it in the same regards as Mario and Zelda.
That's a good point. But I feel like at the same time, 15 games in your life cycle is pretty good for something that was debuted in what, the 80s, the early 90s?
86.
Yeah.
Metroid. So Metroid, the original game, was introduced in 86.
It's old.
Oh yeah, it definitely was old. They even market it as like its own thing and market it as the Adventure series, part of the Adventure series, as you can see here. And they had a password system, which I never liked games with passwords because I could never remember them.
Oh, so like you didn't save, but you like entered a password to get to the point you were at?
Yeah, I think because this is the one sadly I have not played, but later on they made a remake and or like a remaster of Metroid, the original Metroid, so I played that one.
Oh.
But I have not played the original Metroid, so I'm not sure how.
Is it on the NES series on the Switch?
It might be.
I know I know Super is.
From a programming standpoint, that's really ingenious because then they just have to have the code for like each password, right? They don't actually have to save any save data. That's really interesting.
Well, yeah, this was a long time before like save batteries and stuff were.
Yeah.
I believe the Link to the Past. No, I don't. One of the Legend of Zeldas was one of the first games with a save battery.
It would have to be either like the first or second Zelda game.
Yeah, it was one of the first Zeldas had a save battery. It was one of the first games, I believe.
But what's the real cool thing about all these games is that you didn't. So it's interesting that you said that when you played Super Metroid, you were super lost because I say the core mechanic or the core theme of a lot of these Metroid games is that it doesn't tell you what to do. It is a game purely of self-discovery. And they purposely, like, I feel like in modern times, really dick you over on, like, how secretive a lot of progression is hidden under. So I know when I first played it, I spent like a good hour trying to get to the first boss just to realize that, well, if I just bombed this one spot, oh, that's where the door was. But you would never know unless you literally got so aggravated that you just started trying to blow holes in all the rooms. and Metroid, again, like Metroid's a big series. They'd even introduced a new type of genre called Metroidvania.
Yeah.
And to give a clarification, Metroidvania is like a amalgamation of Metroid and Castlevania. Because Castlevania very much, like Symphony of the Night, very much improved on the Metroid style of gameplay to the point where, it's Metroidvania now.
Honestly, that's something that's lacking in a lot of modern games. They're so, they literally tell you every objective and everything, and you just completing a checklist,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the cool thing, because, like, I would say, like, the Metroid series kind of has that, where it's like, well, I need to do this to get to this, but it's like a soft list, and it's a list that you keep in your head.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be points where it's like, God, I can see there's a power up there, but I can't reach it because there's a barrier, or the wall's too high, or there's this weird block. And then you realize when you get a power up later on, it's like, that's what it was for. And so, I don't know about you, but me, I'm like, I'm going to go right back there right now. Like, I don't care if it takes me an extra half an hour. I'm going to go get that damn thing.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, and that's also another great thing I believe about the Metroid series is that the power-ups work so well. Because they're just like they're kind of I feel like very organic because it's like God, I wish I could jump higher, and then it keeps popping up like fuck, I can't go here because I can't jump high enough. Oh, I can't go here to jump high enough. And to the point where, exhausted all the other options, so you've like, wait, I didn't even know that was a thing, and now I do, and I love it. Like, one that you don't see too much in some games, like the Prime series, you don't see it too much, is the speed boots. The speed boots basically turn Samus into Sonic the Hedgehog, where if you run in a straight line for long enough, you just start booking it, and there's certain walls that you just basically run through that can only be broken through a speed boost. But you can also just like, well, if I take a knee at the right spot and jump up, instead of running forward, I skyrocket up like a literal rocket into the sky. And there's certain power-ups that you need to be able to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like they build on top of the mechanics without you ever telling you.
You guys didn't give it long enough of a try.
Well, yeah, no, again, I tried giving it to my sister, who's not a gamer at all. Like, the only game she's ever played was the newest Animal Crossing. And I tried throwing her controllers, like, hey, play Metroid. She's like, okay, how do I open this door? And she just kept walking into the door. I'm like, have you tried shooting it? And she's like, oh, I can shoot. And I'm like, okay, we're done here. So I can't. I'm cringing. But the also cool thing about the Metroid series is that they have a strong sci-fi setting that I love too, because the even in the original game and even in the second game, I mean, you could say for all the games, they've been inspired by like sci-fi movies, and even the creators specifically say like we were inspired by by Aliens.
Makes sense.
So like they took a lot of the designs elements and like scenery stuff and implemented it into their games from the movie Alien and Aliens.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Ridley's head's very xenomorph.
Oh, yeah. And then, like, the titular Metroid is very much like a face hugger and all that. And it's cool because they even do homages like Ridley. Like, Ridley's the main character of the Alien series. And the most recurring boss that's been in every single game, is Ridley, the space pirate pterodactyl.
And he's in Smash.
Yes, he's in Smash. Yeah, but he's been in every single game, and then they just have multiple references to the different stuff, and they kind of go a little bit more chronologically with the games that are released. People loved Metroid, but I believe there wasn't too much hubbub, and only like 86 to 91. 91, they came out with Metroid 2 for the Game Boy. And that's actually the first time we get the iconic shoulders Samus has. Mm-hmm. Because originally, in the original Metroid, it was for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So they were able to change the colors when Samus got suit upgrades. Oh, also, Samus gets suit upgrades, if I haven't mentioned already.
When did Super Metroid come out? Because I would have thought it was Metroid, Super Metroid, Game Boy, but that makes more sense when I think about it.
No, so it was Metroid 2, Return of Samus. And then Super Metroid came out in 94.
Okay, so it was later.
Yeah. But in Metroid 2, that's where you get Samus's iconic shoulders because it was on the Game Boy. It didn't have color. So how do you know how do you know or visually represent when you get the suit upgrade? Well, you get bigger shoulders.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So like they started tweaking stuff visually, and then Super Metroid, when you talk about Metroid, you got to talk about Super Metroid, because Super Metroid is what got Metroid on the map. I'm going to speak boldly here. No one would be talking about Metroid if it weren't for Super Metroid. It literally...
Why specifically this game?
Because...
So how many more cells did it have than the original Metroid?
Sorry, say that again?
Sorry, how many more sales did it have than the original Metroid?
So the original Metroid had 2.73 mil. Yeah, 2.73 million cells.
Pretty good.
Almost 3 million cells. God.
Yeah, hold up. I also believe I have somewhere the cell numbers for the Super Nintendo. Let's see. So Super Metroid only was the top 33rd game ever sold on the console.
Wow, top 33rd on the console. The SNES had a pretty big library. That's pretty good.
Yeah, so sadly it got beat out by Kirby Superstar and Final Fantasy, I want to say 4. Yeah, 4. But it beat Dragon Quest and The Lion King.
Wait, Lion King?
For the SNES.
Apparently, the SNES Lion King is really good.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a huge seller for the console. But people to this day look back to Super Metroid and are like, yeah, no, this is the best game of all time.
Oh, okay.
There's actually a couple like I think like IGN, like magazines, like published magazines, and like Eurogamer, and a bunch of publications. Like, yeah, no, Super Metroid's one of the top 5, if not the top best game of all time. And
so what about Super Metroid then makes it so good?
I mean, okay, I love Super Metroid, but there are still stuff. I mean, it's not my personal favorite game of all time, but I can definitely see why it's people's personal favorite of all time, is because in Metroid and Metroid 2, you had glimpses of like, oh, this is where you need to go, and sometimes they're a little hand-holdy, or the game mechanics weren't really good. Like in the first game, you could only choose either the ice beam or the plasma beam. You get one or the other, but you need the ice beam to fight the Metroids. So you purposely had to downgrade yourself just to beat the game. And so there was like finicky stuff, and then like Metroid 2 was it was somewhat linear, because it's like you can't progress unless you fight these many like Metroids. But Super Metroid was the one that like made it very much like, no, this is what a Metroid game is. You are totally isolated, badass bounty hunter by yourself, and you gotta take down the space pirates, which are basically like space terrorists. Like, they just cause mayhem and stuff like that, and you single-handedly need to take them down. And you're gonna do that by exploring, upgrading your suit, and traversing this planet, this deadly planet by yourself. And along with the visuals were on top, like top-notch. The music, holy shit, if I could play you some music, I would, because you got some real bangers in Super Metroid.
It's very atmospheric, from my understanding.
Yes, it is very what you said. It was very much what you said.
Atmospheric.
There we go. But then you got tracks that are like early Brimstar is one of the early sections that you go to. I love that song. But yeah, like people love it. I mean, I'll go on a stretch and say it's been deified a little bit, but for good reason. Like, it's a good game, and I think it was even it is touted as being the biggest game on the Super Nintendo. Like,
wow. It doesn't have much free space?
Yeah, it took up, I wish I wrote it down exactly the number, but basically it went over capacity on the memory chip kind of thing.
Wow.
Where it's like it's their biggest file size Super Nintendo game of the Super Nintendo library.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. But Super Metroid came out in 94, and we didn't hear shit until 2002. Sorry, yeah, 2002. Well, we got 2 games. We got Metroid Fusion and the Metroid Prime series. I mean, not to skim over Fusion too much, but it was a very fun game. It was for the Game Boy, and it had a lot of cool mechanics and stuff like that. It was very much a fun game. Prime, we'll be talking about it later, but it revolutionized the Metroid series again by saying, well, play a person with an arm cannon. Why not make that first person? Yeah. And so that's when you get the biggest game difference, because all these previous games, Fusion, Super Metroid, the games so far have been 2D platformers. Metroid Prime decided, let's make it a puzzle platformer, or just a platformer, but in first person. And it works really, really well. And then we get the remake of the original Metroid called Metroid Zero Mission. Now, this one's actually quite interesting, because at this point, Metroid Prime did gangbusters. Like, everyone loved it. And so they made like a 2-volume manga explaining the origins of Samus. And so they basically remade the first game, redubbed it Zero Mission, and implemented those storylines from the manga. Cool. And then we get Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, which was the first, other than the main story, there was a side game, Metroid's first time in multiplayer. And it's okay. I haven't been able to play it because, Nintendo Online's no longer a thing. Yeah.
I've heard that, I think they say that Prime 3, 1, 2 is the order of the game's quality, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, for this episode, I decided to replay all the Prime series games, because I have the trilogy pack, and I will say I hear people love the story of Echoes, but gameplay wise, not the strongest.
Okay.
And that's also, you get Metroid Prime Hunters that came out 2 years later in 2006, and it was basically Metroid nothing but multiplayer, but for the DS. And I actually remember borrowing a copy of this for my friend. And here's the cool thing about the multiplayer in Prime Hunters: you don't need to own the copy to play with a friend.
Oh, DS download.
You get to do it through DS download. So if your friend just has a DS, you can have like a 3-person, 2-person party, first-person shooter party going on.
That sounds pretty cool.
And I remember
It's
doing
actually
that
amazing. Like
in the car with my friend.
Wow.
Where it's like, we're playing it together, Dad. God. They're like, okay, whatever. And then we get Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, which was, for the time, the finale of the Metroid Prime series. Like, it ended off the story that it had established. And then
that's where we introduced Dark Samus, correct?
Yeah, that's the end of Dark Samus.
The end of Dark Samus.
Yeah, end of Dark Samus. And then we get this abomination, Metroid Other M. Metroid Other M is lampooned as one of the worst Metroid games because it fucked with the formula too much.
What is it now? Like, what is Other M? If the others were first-person shooters / or they're first-person platformers, what is Other M now?
So Other M, okay, so Other M, to say something good about Other M, because it is a good game. Gameplay-wise, pretty decent. It's just some of the mechanics don't work. So in each game, you can't, like, some of these games like follow a sequel, like the Prime series. They're titled, they have titled sequels. But at the end of each game, there's a reason why Samus downgrades herself. Because during the game, you're spending all this time upgrading yourself so your suit can withstand moving around in water without being waterlogged and stuff like that. So you get the space gravity suit. You know, I think it's either the space or gravity suit. I think they go back and forth on the name, but I'll just call it the gravity suit. To get the gravity suit, so you can walk normal in water. You get a grapple beam. You get stronger beams. But at the end of each game, Samus either willingly gets rid of her powers or something happens and she gets forcibly downgraded. Now, in Other M, she just decides to turn them off because
she just doesn't want to have powers anymore.
No. So, not to get too deep into the story, basically she's reworking with an old group that she used to work with before. Mm-hmm. And for their safety, she gets to downgrade herself until the big man tells her when to use her upgrades.
Interesting. Which
I fucking hated, because playing this, I remember dying so many times at a specific section, and then like just to realize, oh, if I just waited another minute or two, fucking the boss dude would just, hey, maybe you should power yourself up. He'd be like, oh yeah, maybe I should, thanks for letting me know. It's like I died so many times because Dickface didn't speak up soon enough.
So it's kind of like this game was kind of like you can only use your powers when we decide kind of game.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't really creative with the powers.
Yeah.
Because normally the powers, you can do multiple things with, let's say, a speed boost or a grappling hook. Because like a grappling hook you can use to traverse a level. Yeah. Or you can use it, and especially, let's say, Prime 3, you can use it to rip off enemy armor or shields. This game, no, your power-up does one thing and one thing only. Don't get creative. Which is like, okay, then why are we calling this Metroid? Also, they decided to give, this is the first time Samus has a voice. And
okay.
No, Samus should be like Link and be a silent protagonist. I mean, it's a nice feature. It's just also the story is dog shit. But that's enough kicking a dead horse. And then we're up to date, where the last game that really come out is Metroid Samus Returns, which is a remake of Metroid 2. And it's a pretty solid remake. I'm a little iffy about how the upgrade system is, because as the games got further and further new, they started making it a little too easy to find all the upgrades, to the point where they literally would just show up on your map and they would mark it off like, hey, you got it.
So it kind of ruined some of the the exploration and discovery.
Yeah, because I would say like Prime 3 did it best, where it's like, oh no, you got this upgrade, you go to the special area, you send out research drones, and boom, you actively had to send out a researcher drone to get more power up, like to see where the power ups are.
Interesting.
But like in other M, it's like, oh, you beat the game. Well, here's all the power ups you missed. You just know where they are now. Like I didn't even have to work for that. Like, come on.
There's no sense of there's no sense of like discovery or achievement.
Yeah, it's just like, well, anything I miss, I'm gonna find later.
Before we move on to Samus Returns here, as I see, what about the gameplay of Other M? Was the gameplay good? Was it just the story that was the issue?
The story was the main issue. Gameplay was pretty solid because it was a 3D, like it was a fixed camera 3D perspective. So
was it first person or third person?
It was both.
Oh.
So there'd be sections where you can like, because it was on the Wii, so if you pointed your Wii remote at the TV, you would go into first person mode and be able to shoot missiles.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
But then when you put it to the sideways, you would move around in a with a third person camera. So it, again, gameplay is pretty solid. It also was super linear, so there wasn't too much in it was a little hand-holdy. But
I got you.
Yeah. But the Metroid Samus Returns, the way they implemented finding the upgrades was you have these Aeon abilities, and they're basically like old Chozo abilities. So basically you can see through walls and ill-marked upgrades on your map. And I'm like, okay, I like that. I actively have to scan an area to see where the power-up is. I like that better than the game outright telling me.
That is kind of cool because it's kind of like a discovery aspect. Like you go into a room, you scan the room, you're like, there's nothing here. Or you go into another one, and you're like, oh wait, there's the power up I need.
I mean, it's a good time saver, but like the holy grail of games, Super Metroid's like, no, if you don't know where a power up is, well, you're shit out of luck. Explore more then.
Yeah.
He didn't care. And I think a lot of people like that, where it's like, no, I gotta figure it out. The game shouldn't tell me. And that's where we are currently when it comes to the game.
Samus Returns was the last one, really?
Yeah.
I know we've got. I know where you're going with this next one.
No, that's it. I'm gonna talk about the lore now.
Oh, okay. Because I thought you were gonna mention Metroid Prime 4.
Later, I will.
Okay.
But here's also the real cool thing I will say about the Metroid series is it's very light on the story. It's not crazy like, oh my god, like, are we gonna do this and this and that? Like the games aren't in order at all, but there is an overarching story. But while you're playing, the story is just lightly sprinkled through the game.
Yeah. Would you say the story takes a backseat to the gameplay then?
Oh, definitely. And so here's like a rough timeline. I mean, here's my timeline I have for reference. As you guys can probably see, and which I'll put in the episode. But it's an interesting timeline. So just basically, but it can be very detail oriented. If you go into the specific games, it's very much the be old about it. It's very Dark Souls in that way, where you don't get the story unless you're actively looking for it, scanning enemies, scanning logs, like in the Prime series, or in the other 2D games. Like you just put certain stuff that they infer into context.
Yeah, that's my favorite kind of storytelling in games, honestly.
I feel like that's similar to kind of the Fallout games. Like you have the main Fallout story, and then if you really want a lot more lore, you can do like the hacking of the terminals or the like notes that you find in the different places and stuff.
That's my favorite thing about Fallout, honestly.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of Fallout 4 recently, so that's why I brought that up.
I need to replay that. Okay, back on track again.
Here's the gist. I'm going to specifically talk about 3 games that mark the beginning, middle, and end of Samus's story. So we don't get too bogged down about the nitty-gritty of,
Wait, are those the actual dates that it's supposed to be taking place on?
So, yes. I don't know if it says here, but these aren't... So the years that you're seeing, those aren't like... In the year,
they aren't our
and
years.
our Lord, 2075. No, these are in the Federation year of 2000.
Okay, so it's not BAC.
No, it's more like space.
Yeah,
made up space time.
Yeah,
but it gives you a chance to kind of understand it. But I'll start with Zero. What I'm going to talk about is the story with Zero Mission, Super Metroid, and Metroid Fusion, because those are like the beginning, middle, and end of the storyline. With Zero Mission, the story with that is Samus was like a young child on a space colony, because we're that far into the future where we have space colonies, we have a Galactic Federation, but the Galactic Federation doesn't have an army because, the universe is at peace. But here comes along the space pirates to be like, fuck you, we're just gonna, we're gonna be space pirates. We're gonna just take your shit and kill you if you fight back. And Ridley, Ridley here, the pterodactyl that he is, decides to, he personally kills Samus's mom in front of Samus.
Man.
I believe her dad is the, colonel of the space colony, and he blows up the colony, and he goes down with the ship kind of idea.
Mm-hmm.
So Samus is orphaned by the space pirates, but Old Man Bird Dude, who's a Chozo, which is an alien race of bird people, they're called the Chozo, takes her literally under his wing, and raises her and takes her back to the home planet of Zetus. And then the Chozo are a very ancient race. Like, they came about during the primordial ood of the universe. Like, they were the first intelligent race to conquer the whole galaxy. But, they got too big and then they fell. So there's some mystery about what happened, why the Chozo, no longer are in power. Yeah. But they're no longer in power. They're a dying race. And so what the old Papa Chozo decides to do is to raise Samus as a Chozo warrior. And they do stuff where they give her Chozo DNA, so that's why she's such a great jumper. They give her power suit, so her default power suit. I'll show you the Prime cover art. This is what her power suit looks like. This is what her power suit is.
Yeah.
That was a gift from the Chozo. And they decide that they use this supercomputer, Mother Brain, to be like a surrogate mother too.
Okay.
But as as she grows up, she's like getting into adulthood, and like all supercomputers, Mother Brain decides to go turn evil. So she aligns herself with the space pirates to destroy the Chozo and be part of the space pirates and rule over the world and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mother Brain portrays Samus. Samus has no home, no family, and that's when she decides to be a bounty hunter. Because the Galactic Federation doesn't have a military, but what they do have are bounty hunters. So they just outsource the military work. And for Samus to prove herself as like a badass bounty hunter, her quote-unquote zero mission is to defeat the space pirates on her home planet.
Okay,
and
that's original game being remade with the story, so now you're getting the story. Okay.
And so that's the story going into the game.
Yeah.
Then the game itself is just, hey, go around, kill some of the generals, fight Kraid, who's like a fat, green, three-eyed... Kraid. No, it's Kraid with a K.
Oh, Kraid.
Yeah. I actually would love to show you Kraid, because he is quite redonkulous. Like, he's just a chubby guy who shoots hands from his multiple belly buttons.
Oh.
Yeah, he's a interesting boss. So yeah, Kraid, you fight him, you fight Ridley and stuff like that, and you defeat him, and you defeat Mother Brain, and you're a success. And that's how the game ends. And and after that, in the timeline, after that, that's when the Prime series picks up. Even though Prime came out, what year did Prime come out?
Many eons later.
I mean, release-wise, Prime came out in 2002, but apparently it takes place right after Metroid that came out in 1986.
So it's very similar to those Godzilla reboots.
Yep, it very much so is where they just originally they didn't care about Metroid Prime fitting in the timeline. They're just like, you just make the game. Who cares about where it takes place?
Yeah.
But the fans and even the developers have come to a consensus where Metroid Prime fits in between Metroid and Metroid 2.
Okay. So the entirety of the Metroid Prime series fits between those two?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Fits between the two oldest games, which
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Does that mean 4 is going to fit in between the two? I guess we don't know that yet.
We'll get there. So the next big milestone in the Metroid lore is Super Metroid.
Yeah.
What happened, without going into, we're not going to cover, at least in this section, the Prime. But Metroid 2, basically, the Metroids are being weaponized, because Metroids are an alien. They're an alien. Samus is not a Metroid. Metroids are these aliens that can absorb any life form's energy and kill them.
They're like the Zeldas to the Links.
Yeah, I mean, sure, yes.
From like a name standpoint.
Yeah, name standpoint, they're the titular enemy that's somehow involved in every single game. Actually, you kind of see it here too. Here's like that's a like cartoon drawing of a Metroid right there on my screen.
little dude.
Yeah,
he's just a guy.
but they're terrifying because they have underneath those big fangs are a toothy maw that plops on your head and starts sucking the energy out of you until you're dead.
The scary way to die.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it is a face hugger.
Yeah, it's based off his face hugger.
Wonder where they got that from.
Yeah, but so in Super Metroid, you just finish the mission to put all the Metroids to extinction, kill every single last one of them. But in the process of doing that, you killed basically like the Hive Mother Metroid, the Metroid Queen, and you're like, okay, mission done. Let's call it a day. Let's get back to the ship. And as you're doing that, you come upon a room filled with Metroid eggs, and one of them hatches. A Metroid imprints on you, and so basically, it doesn't attack you because you're mom.
Interesting.
So what Samus does is like, well, you know what? I'm just going to turn this into the Federation scientists, because if this thing can absorb energy from any life form, that probably could be a really good energy source and solve our energy problem. But then I have to say, if you got into space, do you even have an energy problem? But that's besides the point. It can solve their energy problem. But of course, the minute that Samus leaves, guess who shows up?
Ridley.
Literally, Ridley shows up. He even teases you where he's like, hey, I'll fight you to get back the Metroid. Nah, fuck you. I'm just gonna dip. And he leaves mid-boss fight.
What the heck?
Yeah, that's the beginning of Metroid, Super Metroid.
Wow.
He just bounces and he sets the ship, the research ship, to self-destruct. You get to get the hell out of Dodge. And you go back to your original planet of Zebus, and you gotta, what's the GTA meme of oh shit, here we go again. And it's basically that, where you go back to Zebus. You gotta fight Kraid again. You gotta fight. You gotta fight. This ghost on the ghost ship. Like you shoot a ghost, Phantoon.
But normal type attacks are ineffective against ghosts.
Samus has a laser arm cannon. She don't give a fuck. And here's the thing, you're going through this whole planet because if they get a hold of that Metroid, they're going to start cloning them and making more of them. And, here we go again with the Metroids being a bioweapon.
We don't want that.
Yeah. And through the whole game, you're just like, okay, you're fighting baddies. And when you finally fight Ridley, you go into his little lair in the back room of his, and the Metroid's gone. It's not there anymore. So you're like, fuck, where is it? So you go to the new spot where Mother Brain is, and of course they started cloning Metroids, so you gotta kill them. And as you're getting there, so the Metroids aren't too big, they're pretty decent, but in comparison to a real person, they're the size of a house cat.
Okay.
But Samus runs into the original Metroid, the baby Metroid, or the Super Metroid, wink wink, which is literally the size of a car.
Oh.
And it's a Metroid, and it starts fucking eating Samus. But then it's like, wait, you're my mommy. I should stop eating you. And then fucks off.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and so getting your way to fighting Mother Brain, and when you do, you fight her and you kill her. And you're like, yeah, save the day. But Mother Brain's like, oh no, this ain't going down like I did before. I got a robot body now, so I'm gonna punch you and shoot fire at you from my mouth. And she thoroughly kicks your ass. And that's when the Super Metroid shows up and is like, no, I'm gonna save mommy. Sucks the energy out of Mother Brain until she's dead. So you're like, yeah, Mother Brain's dead again. Ooh. And that's when the Super Metroid goes to you, and whatever takes the energy from Mother Brain and puts it into you. So the Metroid's healing you.
Oh, wow.
And as it's healing you, Mother Brain's like, I'm back. This isn't even my final form. And starts getting back up and starts healing and starts wailing on the Super Metroid. And then once you're fully healed, the Super Metroid goes in for one last attack. Mother Brain just blows up the baby.
Oh my god.
And you just look up and you're like, oh my god, you killed it. It spent its last breath saving me. And with that, and I'm assuming the Metroid's juices on your suit, you get another suit upgrade, and you kick Mother Brain's ass for reals this time. She's dead. She's really dead this time. And because she's really dead, the planet goes on self-destruct, and you get the hell out of Dodge. And that's how the game ends.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the most, and that goes straight to Other M, as you can see on the thing, Other M. And that's why I kept going back between calling it the Super Metroid and the baby, because in Other M, whenever Samus was referring back to the Metroid, she's like, oh, this reminds me of the baby. And how the baby took care of me. And how I looked out for the baby. It's like, shut the fuck up about the baby. But again, I need to stop harping on Other M. It's decent gameplay, I swear, guys. But Metroid Fusion is the last stop, or like the last chapter of the Metroid series. In that game, you know, it's a couple years afterwards, and the Federation's like, hey, Samus, we're exploring Zebes, or ZRX39, which is the homeworld of the Metroids. And they're like, hey, something weird's going on. It might be Metroids. We know you've dealt with these guys before. Can you come with us? And so she does. And they discovered this new parasitic life that takes over the hosts of the original hosts, making them more powerful, but making them more aggressive. And Samus gets attacked by one of them, but she shrugs it off. She's like, okay, I'm fine. I went to the health bay. I'm good. And as she's flying off, this parasite takes over her body and makes her crash into an asteroid field as she's like leaving.
Oh, man.
And so like this parasite tries to take out Samus, but the Federation like health ship, or one of the Federation ships, is right there. So they go right in, try to save her life, and the X-Parasite is like become one with the power suit that she has. So they have to like laser off the power suit, and they're like, okay, if we don't give her some type of vaccine, she's gonna die. And so they still have a little bit of, you know, Metroid DNA saved in the back. So they inject her with Metroid DNA, and that kills off what they dub the X-Parasite.
Okay.
And I realized now that I forgot to mention it in the for Zero Mission, the Chozo were the people, they created the Metroids. Metroid is a created bioweapon specifically to attack the X-Parasite. But because, you know, that got lost to the annals of time, no one knew about it. So Samus made sure that the X-Parasite came back by killing all the Metroids. Now that Samus is powered up by Metroid DNA, she can absorb the X-Parasite and make it game mechanic wise. So she just basically the health drops are X-Parasite and you heal up that way. But here's the scary thing about the X-Parasite. They're like single-celled organisms that work in a hive mind, and they take over a host's body. And so...
Is this the birth of who I think this is the birth of?
I don't know.
Is this the birth of Dark Samus?
No. Dark Samus is only in the Prime series.
Oh.
She lived and died with only in the Prime series.
She's a parasite too, though, yeah? Isn't that what she is?
No, she's a creation of Phazon.
Oh, okay.
Where the X-Parasite, there is a Dark Samus-like monster. It's called the Sax, the SA/X Parasite, or the make it longer, the Samus Aerosine X-Parasite, or the Sax.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so what the X-Parasite does is it takes over a host, and it takes over whatever knowledge they had. So this becomes a problem when the X-Parasites start taking over scientists on this research bay that the game takes place on. And they learn that, like, oh, fuck, these things could take over the whole universe, and there's nothing we can do about it because we killed all the Metroids. But at the end of the game, basically Samus decides to say, hey, fuck you, Federation. She tells the Federation, like, hey, the X-Parasite's out of hand, and you also been growing Metroids. What the fuck? And then the Federation's like, yeah, we've been growing Metroids. What the fuck are you gonna do about it? Like, you can't do anything about it. Just stay where you are, and we'll have some Federation people come in and mop it up. Like, we no longer need your services. So Samus decides I'm just gonna crash this giant research satellite. I'm gonna crash it into the nearby planet. And she does, and the game, and the final boss of that game is a hybrid, because in Metroid 2 there was multiple forms of the Metroid as he grew up. So you fought one of a super form of the Metroid. So the game ends with Samus being a criminal in the eyes of the Galactic Federation, and she doesn't have her power suit, which is like the best sci-fi technology of all time, and she doesn't have it anymore. Yeah.
And that's the end?
Yeah, that's as if we're like up to date on the story, that's how the story is currently at. Samus is a fugitive, and she doesn't have her awesome suit anymore because the X-Parasite took it over.
That's where Zero Suit Samus comes in.
Well, again, they've been going a little bit. I mean, I don't know when they made the decision to make Samus' suit a hologram, because in some games it's more of like a mech, hard metal suit. But then somewhere, I think it might have been with the Prime series or Other M, but the suit is like a hologram that you can turn off and on.
Interesting.
Which like I like that because it seems very sci-fi-y. but it doesn't make sense with some of the upgrades and some of the previously established.
It doesn't really make
lore.
sense at all.
It's hard light, guys. It's hard light hologram.
So I'll say this: Metroid is it's sci-fi in the sense of it's magic sci-fi. I think the term is where it's like okay, it's sci-fi, like it's all sciencey stuff, but like you could do crazy shit like kill ghosts.
Instead of sci-fi, it's sci-fi, which is science fantasy.
Oh,
I think it leans more on sci-fi, but like sci-fi fantasy. Because like I'll say this: like sci-fi is like Star Trek. Sci-fi fantasy is Star Wars.
Yeah,
I think is
okay. That. Right. I can see that. I feel like Star Trek is on a touch more realism than Star Wars. Don't come at my throat. I just can kind of see the point.
Oh yeah, I bet I'm gonna get massacred. All of us. So yeah, any questions about the story? Because I know I left out a lot of gaps because there's just a lot to cover.
It makes a lot of sense. I think you covered the story really well.
Yeah, I followed.
Now I feel like the part that I've been hinting at this whole time is the Prime series. Now the Prime series in the timeline takes place a few years, or actually technically on the timeline I have up here, takes place right after Samus Zero's mission, because when you destroyed in the original game, when you destroyed the space pirates, there's a couple of their space pirate freight ships that went off with some of the Metroids, and so basically you're hunting them down, being like, I'm gonna put an end to these goddamn Metroids.
Yeah.
And as you're on their ship, you discover that the space pirates are playing around with a new energy substance, and so you go down to the home planet, you knock some heads together, and then you realize that their space pirates are mining this thing called Phazon. Phazon, I like to think of it as like a liquid form of nuclear energy.
Okay.
Because in the game, and it's like has high radiation levels that cause physical damage to you.
Okay.
And it's like neon blue, so it looks really cool. And again, this is with the first Prime game, Samus's first journey into being a first-person shooter. And here's the real cool thing: this is the first time. I mean, I'm probably wrong about this, but this is the first time where a big main Nintendo character main character in Nintendo, their game was not made by Nintendo. The Prime series was made by Retro Studios.
Yeah, Retro.
Which was an American-based company, not Japanese like Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they had, again, and they were given way more liberties. Like, hey, don't worry about where this fits into the timeline. Like,
just make a good game.
Yeah, just make a good game. Like, make a fun game. And so I like to say Metroid Prime is if you took Super Metroid and made it 3D, because you got a lot of the same power-ups. You have... everyone loves Super Metroid, and everyone takes a little bit from Super Metroid. Like, you always have the same power-ups. You have, a lot of conventions from Super Metroid are sprinkled throughout every game that came after it. So that's why I feel like Metroid Prime it's like a first-person shooter Super Metroid. So it's a pretty good game. It's a good game. It's fun. You can change between your different beams. So normally it's like, I got the ice beam. I can only use the ice beam unless I downgrade myself. Well, in the Prime series, you can easily switch between, I want to use my wave beam. Oh, I need to use the ice beam. Oh, I need to use my plasma beam. Because the way I played it with the Wii version of Metroid Prime. Because originally the first two games came out on GameCube.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one came out on the Wii. And then I think
isn't the Wii like the definitive version of it? Like that's the best.
There is a definitive version. Where is my release timeline? Where did you go? Okay, so after in 2009 they came out the Metroid Prime trilogy, which was they reworked the first two games to work on the Wii, and it was basically one CD for all three games.
Mm-hmm.
And when it originally came out, it was like $100 package deal for all three games. But I remember I gave my copy for like $20 because I got it like 10 years later, or like 5 years later at GameStop. Out to the players, guys. Anyways, that's the version I played. So when I talk about game mechanics, I'm basing it off of that version. So yeah, the game was really fun. But what happened at the end of that game was one of the last suit upgrades you get is the Phazon suit, and the Phazon suit basically made it so you didn't take any more radiation damage from the Phazon. That's you're like knee deep in now because you're at the bottom of the Phazon mines trying to figure out what the hell these space pirates are doing. And as you're playing through the game too, you realize that the space pirates are trying to infuse the Metroids with Phazon, and it's corrupting them. It's like turning them more evil or making them go like crazy. And that's what Phazon does. It corrupts the mind. It makes you go crazy. And it poisons your body.
That's not good.
Yeah. You do all the things. You find all these Chozo artifacts to unlock the gate to get to the final boss. So you have to fight Ridley first. But once you fight Ridley, you get to fight the final boss, which is called a Metroid Prime. And I think the best way to explain what the Metroid Prime looks like is a giant space crab.
Giant space crab.
It's
so not Optimus.
No, it's technically a Metroid, but
Metroid.
Yeah, here we go.
I see.
It's giant space crab.
Ew.
It was interesting because you can see how like in the different colors means the different beams you need to use on it, and then you can also see the Phazon suit that Samus is rocking.
Yeah.
Which I mean,
but it does not look like a Metroid at all.
Well, because it's corrupted by the Phazon. Like, that's the idea.
Wow.
But, of course, this is not even my final form. This is actual drawings of it. Yeah. But once you, beat the shit out of it, it turns into this.
It was a starfish?
Kind of starfish. And you have to use the Phazon beam. And it's really interesting because you can't use the Phazon beam throughout the game. But in the final boss is the only time you use it. Because you basically sit in a pool of radioactive Phazon and shoot the shit out of it.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was a special cutscene that you only got if you did 100% in the game.
Oh wow.
Because when you're fighting the Metroid Prime, it rips the Phazon suit off of you as in its death thralls. But you get the hell out of Dodge, you save the day. But if you get 100%, the post-credit scene you get is basically the Phazon suit reaching out, grabbing, like digging itself out of the ground kind of vibes, but it's coming out of this pool of Phazon.
That's trippy.
And so it was a hint to Metroid Prime 2, and the first time we ever see quote-unquote Dark Samus. So Dark Samus is a creation of Samus's Phazon suit. So Samus, her DNA, Chozo DNA, and the Metroid DNA with Phazon.
Wow.
So the fact that she's even a living being is surprising.
Cool.
And let me pull up an image of Dark Samus.
Dark Samus.
I can spell, right? No, I forgot an R. So there's a couple, this is what she looks like in Metroid Prime 2. Which, in the overworking story, does not factor in too much, just other than to show that Dark Samus is going to these corrupted planets, corrupted by Phazon, recruiting space pirates, and powering herself up by sucking Phazon. Which is really interesting because in the third game, Dark Samus has her own legion of space pirates that see her as a god. But Metroid Prime 2 is interesting in the sense that you're on the planet... You're on the planet Ether, and the cool thing about the planet Ether is the way planets get hit with Phazon are with Phazon seeds.
Phazon seeds.
Yeah, so basically a Phazon seed hits a planet, it corrupts it, and it starts growing Phazon.
Okay.
But when the Phazon seed hit the planet Ether, it hit it so hard that it affected a dark version of Ether from a dark dimension, like an antimatter dimension.
Okay.
And so you have the planet goes into this like flux of time and space where it's like, hey, there's two planets existing in the same spot.
Interesting.
And so the whole game, you're traveling between light ether and dark ether. And so the whole game's about light and darkness.
Stranger Things.
Yes. I think that's actually a good way to explain it.
I was going to say it's a link. I think it's a link to the past or a link between or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's basically there's two planets occupying the same place. If you go deep into the lore, you're trying to solve this 1,000-year war between the moth people. They're literally moth people, and the Ings. There's ING. No, INK. The Inks or the Ings, which are just like more evil crab people, but with like a mono eye.
Cyclopean crab people.
I mean, yeah. But this whole time you're dealing with that. Dark Samus is just going around fucking with things, powering up the Ing with Phazon and shit like that, just making your life harder because she's a fucking asshole. And you actually fight her, and you fight her in this form in Dark Ether, where she's all like, you can see her organs and veins and shit like that.
That's trippy. Look at 3 eyes.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And that's how that game ends. And it ends pretty interesting because so Metroid Prime, the first game, you got depowered because you literally got your powers ripped off you. But in Prime 2, Samus they give her a dark suit because when you go to the dark dimension or the dark ether, you take damage if you're not in spheres of light. And you take a shit ton of damage. Like, I can't play the game in this kind of damage.
Wow.
So one of the first upgrades you get is a dark suit. But like the first game, you have to do a giant fetch quest of collect all the keys before the final boss. Collect all 13. It's either 13 or like 9, but you have to do a giant fetch quest for these hidden keys, and you get the light suit, which looks pretty fucking badass. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, this is the light suit. Yeah, I really dig the design.
Yeah, that's nice.
It makes it so this is like the dark suit. You take minimal damage, so you still take damage while you're in the dark ether, not in light. But basically, once you do you save the world and shit like that, or close to saving the world, and you need to look for all these keys, they're like, you've really proven yourself. Here, wear this armor that we only give to the greatest. Basically, they bestow her the greatest honor by giving her this light suit. You do that, and you fight Dark Samus, and day is saved. But to go back to, I think, because you mentioned before, the reason why people think this one is like the most meh out of all the games is because the story is not really involved with the overarching 3 games of the Phazon, the Phazon saga. And the beams, you have a dark beam, so a beam that shoots dark energy, a beam that shoots light energy, and then a beam that shoots both. So antimatter beam, but they all have ammo. So you can't just shoot willy-nilly. You have an ammo reserve that you can deplete, making the beams useless. And I know for me, that was very much a bummer of a game mechanic, because it's like, oh, I just want to use the most powerful beam, but then I will have no ammo at all for the bosses, and I'm not going to spend 15 minutes refilling my ammo.
Yeah.
But then we get to Metroid Prime 3, which I think is the best one out of all the Prime games. Like, don't shoot me, but I think Metroid Prime 3 is the best one out of the Prime series.
I feel like that's the consensus I've seen.
I mean, people will love Prime 1, like Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't. It's a decent game, but Prime 3 is like the antithesis. Like, okay, we got all the bugs worked out. We know how this game should play.
Yeah.
And the skinny on this story is the space pirate cult that loves, deifies Dark Samus, are getting very going, what's the word I'm trying to look for? They get very emboldened to outright attack a Federation planet. Like, they don't give a fuck. They're just gonna go attack, even though it's the dumbest thing they can do, because they're powered by Phazon. Because at this point, Dark Samus is spreading the influence of the Phazon. And so we have space pirates that are hopped on Phazon and shit like that. And so you go in, you try to stop the invasion, but again, another seed literally materializes out of nowhere, hits the planet before you get a chance to stop it. Because Dark Samus, along with a couple other bounty hunters that you that are teaming up with you, all get corrupted. And so you wake up like 3 days later, and you are outfitted with a special Phazon suit because you are corrupted. You are naturally producing Phazon. You're naturally producing this horrific radiation in your body.
You got to be careful with that.
Actually, yeah, you do, because even though it's a game mechanic where if you just basically decide to use one of your health to go into Phazon mode, it's called hyper mode, you basically can just destroy all the enemies on screen.
Nice.
But here's the thing, though. If you, in the beginning of the game, if you don't empty out your Phazon tank, because each shot takes up a little bit of Phazon that you just stored up, it'll disappear.
Wow.
But later in the game, because if you don't use that Phazon fast enough, it will start overgrowing you and instantly just kill you.
Whoa.
Like, game over. You're dead. Go to the save point. Because you didn't use up the Phazon that is corrupting you.
That's a really interesting mechanic. The ammo and the weapon you're using can kill you.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because all your other compatriots have been corrupted by Phazon, and Dark Samus is literally manipulating them from the shadow, like their minds through the Phazon.
That's
so
trippy.
They've gone insane, and the game ends with, well, also, you have multiple planets. So the two previous games and most Metroid games, you're on one planet. Metroid Prime 3, you're traveling between multiple planets and multiple space stations, which is cool, but it's not the greatest, but it's cool. I like it. So you're traveling from planet to planet, taking out your now corrupted fellow bounty hunters and destroying the Phazon seeds on those planets. But to destroy them, you have to absorb them, and that's how you destroy them.
Okay.
And there's a really cool mechanic, because I think it's a cool mechanic, but it's a little cheesy one, because this was the first Wii Prime game. So there's a lot of like, hey, use the Wii remote for this motion and this motion, like a lot of shoe-in Wii stuff.
Yeah.
And
what of them is, when you're developing for the Wii.
Yeah.
Advantage of the motion controls. Are you even playing a Wii game?
Well, you do with the grapple beam. Like, you literally have to flick your wrist to use the grapple beam. Sure. But in this game, you can go into your ship and just sit in your ship and, like, fuck around, press buttons in your ship.
That's kind of cool.
And one of the things you can do is to see how healthy you are. And later in the game, you basically use that to see how much of your body is corrupted.
Interesting.
And each time you take down a seed, it's like, oh, I'm 25% more corrupted. I'm 50%. I'm 75% corrupted now. And here's the cool thing, too, about all the Prime games. You can scan enemies, and you'll save that as a data log in your helmet. But in Prime 3, once you start taking in the Phazon, if you look into the reflection, because you can see your reflection in your visor, you can start seeing that you have, like, Phazon scars across your face.
That's tricky.
That's really cool attention to detail. I love that in game.
Yeah, like, I noticed it, like, halfway through the game. It's like, wait, when did Samus get a giant blue, like, lightning scar across her face? I'm like, holy shit, that's the fucking Phazon that's killing her.
That's tricky.
And they even add little, like, nice little cutscenes. Like, the first seed you destroy and you absorb all this Phazon at once, Samus, like, takes her helmet off and starts throwing up.
Oh my god.
But she's not throwing up, like, food. She's throwing up Phazon.
It's trippy. What the heck?
And I was like, holy fucking shit! Like, I don't want to hurt you, Samus. Like, no more seeds.
I'm sorry.
But back to the motion controls. My first time playing this game, I literally almost broke my fucking wrist. So there's a section where you need to get to this first seed, but you can't bomb the shield generator with your ship, because your ship can do air raids now. You can't, because there's turrets governed by space pirates. So you need to turn off those turrets. The second turret, there's these like giant energy switches that you can only turn off by using the grappling hook. And I swear to God, I spent like 3 hours on that one goddamn turret because the fucking Wii remote wasn't working.
Sounds like user error to me.
Sounds like a Wii problem to me.
Well, I think it was a little bit of both, but mostly user error, because when I recently played it not too long ago, I'm like, hold up, let me stand as far back as I possibly can. Like, I'm basically like walking backwards into a wall. I do it on the first try.
User error.
Like, I was just a dumb kid. I almost killed my wrist over stupidity. But not drag things on too much. The way this game ends is you figure out. So Phazon comes from a planet named Phazon, real original, but it's a sentient living planet.
Also makes sense.
But it's not in our solar system. It's not even in our universe. Sorry, not in our solar system. Yeah, that's galaxy. Not in our galaxy. It's from like a different galaxy, but it's able to make wormholes, and that's how it's been affecting our galaxy. So you basically work backwards onto creating the wormhole. You go to the planet Phazon, you kill Dark Samus, and you kill the planet of Phazon. And when you kill the planet of Phazon, it destroys all the Phazon in existence.
Wow.
And that's how Samus...
It's Quantum Link.
Yes, sure.
Hive mind.
Yeah, I mean, all those and more. How about that? And that's how the game ends. Like, mission successful. You destroyed all the Phazon that ever could exist. And good day. But here's the cool thing: if you get 100%, you see a ship tailing you when you go into hyperspace.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and here's the thing: for the Eagle Eye people of the Metroid series, I'm like, wait,
it's
I recognize that ship.
It's Ridley.
It's Silax from Metroid Prime Hunters, because you saw his ship in that game. Silax is this guy, if you can see my mouse.
Yeah.
It's his ship, and even says in the lore that he has a personal vendetta against the Federation and Samus.
That's crazy.
And that gets us to the point where we are now, where we are just waiting for Metroid Prime 4.
Which has restarted development.
Yeah, so I did a little, because I was not too fresh with what was been happening with Metroid Prime 4. So it was announced in E3 2017.
Mm-hmm. Along with Bayonetta 3.
Yeah. But here's the thing, it was like announced / not announced. I don't know how to really say it.
It was just a logo.
It was, yeah, they just showed a glowing blue 4,
Mhm.
or like a 4 with a black 4 with blue flame backgrounds and
Yeah.
Metroid.
I remember watching that E3 presentation specifically, and I remember seeing Bayonetta 3 and then Metroid Prime 4. I remember being freaking out about it. And then we didn't hear anything about Metroid Prime 4 for like a good year and a half, 2 years.
2 years specifically, because in early 2019, the head director was like, yo, we're not happy where the game's at. We're not happy. We don't feel like this is the game that we want to send out. So we're going to start over from scratch.
Wasn't announced in it was during a Nintendo Direct, I believe.
I thought it was announced internet. You're going to have to double check me on this, but I thought it was just specifically just on its own video.
Oh, you think it was I remember it being a video. I remember seeing the guy. I remember it was the guy speaking, I believe he was speaking Japanese, and they had a voiceover for English. And I remember them specifically saying, the game is not in the state we are happy with. We are completely starting over.
Yeah, which, I mean, I don't blame people, but a lot of people were like, so Metroid Prime 4 canceled, I guess.
I actually saw a lot of support for the decision. I saw a lot of people being like, we can wait. We've waited this long already. Just put out the game that you want us to see. I remember seeing a lot more support than I saw negativity.
Well, I just know like the clickbaity people were just like,
Oh, yeah.
so the game's canceled. Goodbye, Metroid Prime 4. But I was definitely like, make a good game. Like, make the game that you want to release. Because the last thing you want in the Metroid fandom is another M, which feels like a little slapdash. Story doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And especially if you're going to try to tie it into the Prime series, which had a finale to it. Like, you can't deal with Phazon anymore. Like, we've 100% got rid of Phazon.
Yeah.
So, like, is it going to even be, how is it going to even a Prime game without Phazon? And so I did some more digging. So I'm like, okay, what is the newest info on it? And all the newest info I could find is Metroid fans being very desperate. Because I watched a video of like, okay, this guy's been covering the most latest news, and it's just him reading job applications that Retro Studios sent out.
Yeah.
Like, we need people that can work on this engine.
He's just grasping at the smallest.
Yeah, and I was talking to my family, and it's like, this is like the equivalent of someone so hungry to see another Avengers movie that they dug into some research, saw what camera they're using, and was like, okay, so this is how the movie's gonna look like because they're using this specific camera. And I'm just like, oh my god, like, calm down.
They're using a red version 2.0, which means that it's 3 years old, and they're gonna have a slight film grain effect on it in the end.
Yeah, and like, that's all the stuff I could find where it was
and
just
they're
like,
shooting in France.
Like, oh, they're gonna have, Kyle Helflax, who was a senior modeler for the Halo series, is working on Metroid Prime 4.
That's actually really cool to know.
I mean, like, okay, that's cool. But then I started getting into it. It's like, oh, and then they're going to use some type of special engine that was used on Uncharted, Star Wars Last Order.
Unreal?
Sorry, what?
Are they using the Unreal Engine, UE4?
No, they're using some Suxon design.
Oh, I'm not sure then. We aren't going to find out anything about Metroid Prime 4 until they are ready to tell us about Metroid Prime 4. Yeah. And I honestly don't think we're going to be getting Metroid Prime 4 until maybe 2024. Like, it's going to be a while.
It's going to be another Half-Life 3 confirmed.
Which we did end up getting.
Yeah,
Half-Life Alyx. We got it. Or Alex, however it's pronounced.
We did get it after how many years?
No, but I can see it now. People being like, hey, this E3, we're going to get Half-Life 3 and Metroid Prime 4. I'm like, how dare you pull on my heartstrings? Don't play with my emotions like that.
Pokemon Snap's getting a sequel. Anything is possible. We're putting that out there. We're putting that out there.
Oh yeah, for those,
nothing's impossible.
The date this recording, we're doing this on the 19th, so we're like
19th of June.
19th of June. So we're just enjoying the Pokemon DLC and the Pokemon Smile. I know Jason's really happy about that.
Yeah, we're gonna cover Pokemon Smile in depth in the next episode. I've been really grinding this game out, and I've figured out all the secrets, and I really want to tell you guys about it.
Oh, I can't wait for Devin's reaction on that. For Devin, if you're not sure, Pokemon Smile is literally an app game where you teach kids how to brush their teeth.
Yeah, it's for children to learn how to get into the habit of brushing their teeth. Honestly, hey, like if we're deviating a little bit, I'm gonna be real with you. I think that is so cool, and it's from an aspect of what it's supposed to do that is ingenious, and I'm really happy they did it, because that's such a fun way to get kids to be, introduced into Pokemon, as well as for them to start brushing their teeth properly. You know?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I have kids, I'm gonna be like, hey, if you don't brush your teeth, you're gonna lose all your teeth. I'm just gonna scare them to brush their teeth. Like, I don't like. How else are you supposed to teach them how to brush their teeth?
With love and care, Carl.
At first, but if they're gonna be little shitheads, I'm like, I don't want to brush my teeth. It's pointless. I'm like, you want dentures? Do you know how hard dentures are to take care of?
Just terrify them into it. Great idea.
You're kind first, and
Your
they decide
teeth
to be
will
little...
fall out if you miss one day.
Your teeth will fall out the second you hit 13.
Yeah, and I'll be like, and I'm not paying for them. Are you gonna pay for your own teeth? But yeah, that's where we are in the Metroid fandom. Is some of us are grabbing at straws how this game's gonna be, and I don't blame them, because it's been like, I want to know more.
A long time coming. Hey, I mean...
Now I know I rambled on for, again, I can never be on time. It's an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Fuck me.
It's all good.
But I'm curious to get like your thoughts and your opinions. Like,
I will tell you after talking about all this, I'm gonna give Super Metroid a try again.
Well, here's the thing too. Like, originally I bought a copy of Metroid Prime 3 because it was at the time cheaper than the trilogy.
Yeah.
But then I found the trilogy series for super cheap, so I technically have 2 copies.
Okay.
Of Prime 3, and I think you still have a Wii, right?
I do. I know exactly where it is.
Do you have a Wii U too?
I'm staring at my Wii U.
So it works on the Wii U.
Yeah, it's backwards compatible.
I think tomorrow I'm gonna leave you a little gift by your door, and don't worry, I'll disinfect it, and then so you can disinfect it too.
I appreciate it.
And
I might have to give it a try.
Yeah. And Devin, what about you?
Well, I really want to play the whole Metroid Prime series from start to finish, because all I have is like vague memories of playing Metroid Prime 1, and it was super fun.
But those are the best memories.
Yeah, they are, and I really want to experience it for the first time again.
Well, I will say, like, how much does a Wii U cost?
You could probably get it for like $30, dude.
Yeah, are they all on Wii U?
No, it's on the Wii. So here's the thing: if you want to play all the games, you want to get the Metroid Prime trilogy, which I could probably give it to you, but I want it back. And if you don't want to give it back, you could probably find it for super cheap, reused at some GameStop.
Yeah.
And then also, while you're at GameStop, you could buy a used copy of the Wii U.
Yeah, the Wii U's are probably... I think you can find a Wii U probably for like $60 max. They are going for nothing nowadays because the Switch is a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the Wii and the Switch are a thing, so why would you need your Wii U?
Yeah.
Poor Wii U.
I mean, Super Mario 3D Land's still on it. Until that gets ported, you still got a reason to own a Wii U. That game is good.
Wait, isn't that ported?
Or good thing?
No, new Super Mario Bros. U was ported, but not Super Mario Land 3D Land.
All I'm saying is, Devin, if you want to,
World?
there's also plenty of ROMs.
True.
Wait, no, I'm not saying. I'm saying you could. I'm not saying you should.
Mario 3D World. Sorry.
Well, I'm saying is there's plenty of.
There are ways you can play.
There's ways you can play it, yeah.
Other than the Wii U.
Some of them are ROMs. Some of them are the physical copy. Oh, last thing I want to touch on, because I know I should have said this sooner, but I didn't know where to put it. But the Metroid series, as far as I can tell, gave birth to speedrunning.
Interesting.
Really?
Yeah, because the original Super Metroid, if you exploited certain gameplay elements, you could get items out of order.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So any percent runs.
Yeah, so like you could do an 80% run where it's like, yeah, I don't have the ice beam, but like I have the gravity suit and no super missiles. Like you could just have the wackiest loadouts.
It's kind of cool.
And it's crazy because when I do a casual play, like a casual playthrough, like I know where everything is. I roughly know where everything is. So I'm not spending like hours on end trying to figure out what the fuck to do. I can beat the game in 4 hours. If I try to do it in one sitting, I can. Speedrunners, I think, roughly have beaten the game, have gotten the time to an hour to 40 minutes.
Wow.
They can complete the game 100%.
Wow.
It's crazy what speedrunners can do. What
It really is.
Yeah. But
like
a lot of the speedrunning tactics for the game aren't even like, hey, let me glitch through this wall. It's like, no. I just know how to wall jump, or I know how to do this quote-unquote speedball technique.
So they aren't even like hacky. They're just, well, they're kind of hacky, but
they're just good at the game. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah.
They got good. And so, yeah, so if you're a speedrunner, you got Super Metroid to thank for. Cool. You know, I think on that note, I think we should,
I think
head out.
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, class has ended. So my name's Carl,
And I've been Jason.
And I've been Devin.
and thanks for learning with us.
Yeah.